Coveters, great to see everybody today. I'm Sabaa Rehmani, the GM of Covet Fashion, and I'm so excited to have you join us in celebrating Women's History Month today. I am joined by the incredibly talented designer and entrepreneur, Nicole Miller. Welcome, Nicole. Thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Hi, great to be here. So happy you invited me.
Likewise. Just to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Like, how did you get started in the fashion industry?
Well, it's funny because I'm looking at all these questions and I feel like I can relate to all these different areas because my mother was from Paris, so I am half French, and my French mother moved to Fort Worth, Texas. So I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, and then I grew up mostly in Massachusetts from like the age of 7 on, but having had the French mother, she was, very, she was a fashion plate in Paris. And so I always had these fabulous pictures of her. And she always got us French fashion magazines at home. So I lived for these magazines to be delivered. It was just, my lifeline getting a French fashion magazine. And so when I was in high school, I was just hell bent on going to design school and becoming a designer. So I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, and I also went to a school in Paris called the École de la Chambre syndicale de la couture parisienne. And so I have like both degrees from both places, and I was glad to have, a fine arts based education at RISD, but I also had an haute couture training in Paris.
That's amazing. You have your hand in so many different spaces: home decor, perfume, wine. Was the intention all along to create this amazing empire, or did it just
Well,
happen?
I mean, things happen one thing at a time. And I think, now everybody who is a designer now has this global vision. But when I started out designing, I mean, I think everybody was just happy to do the next step. And if I had a far reaching fantasy, because I'd been to couture school in Paris, I was like, oh, I'm going to have my own haute couture house in, New York. But of course, I mean, that's not really realistic because first of all, haute couture clothes are so expensive, and we wouldn't have even had the workmen or the workmanship to do it in the United States. And also, I'm a much more practical person. So I really, I started out designing. My first job was raincoats, which I did have an obsession with raincoats for a long time. But my focus really started out being dresses after that. I was, sort of more into dresses and sportswear. And from that point on, we just, expanded into other areas.
Raincoats. Wow, I had no idea. How fascinating. How
Yeah, it was
she
really fun. I actually really enjoyed that. And that was my first, I mean, I had some assistant jobs prior to that, but that was the first job that I got to actually design things. So
That's
it was
amazing.
kind of funny. It was like one of those things that, I always really had this raincoat obsession, but I didn't want to be a coat designer per se. I wanted to be more of a dress and sportswear designer. And that's where I ended up, which was great.
That's amazing. That story of just following your passion there. So, what's your advice then for those who have interests in various areas but maybe don't know how to get started, or those who are in the industry but maybe at a crossroads?
Well, I always say the best way to get started is to be really focused and to develop your own identity and really stick with that. And, you know, I mean, different things happen in life. Like I had a friend who really wanted to be in dresses and sportswear, and she got a job designing lingerie, and she became hugely successful. And that wasn't her first plan. But I think you start out with your focus and you try to stick to your focus as much as you can and develop your own identity. And trying to stick with that. And I think everything else then will fall into place. And, life throws you curveballs. So, maybe you take a little detour to the right or a little detour to the left, but you try to rein that back in and achieve your goal. But you have to be able to go with the flow and roll with the punches, because different things happen and they guide you in different ways. But you have to always be open-minded and responsive and resourceful, and you always have to have like a positive attitude.
That's sage advice. Brilliant words right there. So let's, in sticking with the theme of Women's History Month for a moment, in a world that tends to pit women against each other, how do you ensure that you create an environment that's really uplifting and empowering females, especially in such a competitive place like the fashion industry?
It's funny. It's very interesting that you phrase it that way because I always hear about women empowering other women, but then I don't see it happening. And I feel like, we always talk about, women are supportive of women and, supporting women's businesses and women's that. And I still see a lot of kind of backstabbing amongst women. So, I mean, I think it's really important that in my business, I have to create an atmosphere where everybody is very supportive of each other and not allow any of that to kind of go on within my company. But I do think that people are very supportive of their friends, and they're more supportive. They'd be supportive of a woman if they knew them, but somehow if it's a woman that they don't know, they're intimidated or fearful, and they would be probably more critical of that person rather than supportive if they don't know them. But sometimes there'll be something that it could be, I don't know, a designer or an actress or anybody in a different field, and you have a negative opinion of them. And if you meet them and then you go, oh, I don't know why I didn't like them, I really do like them. So a lot of it is, fear and unknown and everything. And I think you have to be aware of that. But I think, every day I just have to create a positive atmosphere in my company and amongst all the team players so they don't they don't become that.
Absolutely. I think we can all relate to your words there a little bit. During your time in the industry, then, have you noticed a really marked difference in how we are showing up and supporting one another?
Well, I think that the conversation is out there. The conversation is definitely out there and the talk is out there. And I think, women are realizing, I mean, a lot of people, they say, oh, we've been held back because we're women. And I think you have to take a step beyond that. I mean, everybody in the world has a chip on their shoulders is what I'm finding out. Everybody, no matter who you are. And even like the most gorgeous, fabulous model, you find out her life isn't a picnic either. So I think that we have to just understand where everybody's coming from and be supportive and move forward.
That's great advice. So also, as we, talk more about Women's History Month, I think we need to take a moment and just talk about the history you've been making for the last 40 years with the Nicole Miller brand. That's a huge achievement, a tremendous accomplishment. What are some of the biggest highlights of your brand, and how do you even celebrate a milestone like that?
Well, a lot of really fun things happened over time. And when I first opened up my store on Madison Avenue in, I think, 1987. Well, first of all, my company was opened in 1982, so this makes 40 years. In 1987, we decided to open a store on Madison Avenue, and then we started making men's ties just for a gag. And it became the hugest thing, like everybody was wearing, and it was the kind of anti-corporate look. And so all these men were wearing it to the boardroom, and, everybody had a story. People met their fiance, wearing my tie, or I really caused a lot of relationships to happen. It was, very easy to approach people when they were wearing, it was a conversation opener because all the ties were conversational. So that was a big high point. And then, and through that, since we did so many like wine ties and everything, and we had a lot of great associations like with Absolute Vodka and, some vineyards in California. And so that was a really fun point. And then after that, like I think in 91, we started having fashion shows. And my first fashion show, I had like Christy Turlington and Linda Evangelista and Naomi Campbell. They were all in it. So, and that was a big hit. And then all of a sudden the company went from being just kind of a dress company to having, real recognition as a design company. So those are two like big highlights, and they kind of like connected in a way. And, well, from then on, it's history, but a lot of good things happened over time. And, we got to design a lot of fun things. I mean, I did a Ferrari, I did an airplane, done motorcycles, did a refrigerator once. So I've designed a lot of, kind of whimsical, fun things along the way too, besides clothing.
The variety and the history is just so rich and inspiring. That's amazing. Is there a secret to staying in the industry for 40 years that you could share?
Well, I just say I'm like hopelessly immature, and I just hang out with my young assistants all the time. So I can stay in tune with the trends. But sometimes I have to convince me of stuff, and I kind of go, no, that never sells. No, that never sells. I'm like, come on, you got to try it again.
It's a balance.
So anyway, sometimes they win, sometimes I win. So,
Good
and I
partnership.
have to stay open-minded,
Awesome.
but I'm not
Well,
going back to stirrup pants.
let's not do that. Well, we talked about your history and your future. Let's bring this back to the present. You can't look at the spring 2022 collection without just feeling super happy and bright. I see a lot of it behind you, and it just sparks that in me right away. I know one of the prints is even called My Happy Place, and you really can't
Yeah,
feel anything besides joy from looking
right,
at that.
right.
Can you tell us more about the inspiration behind this season?
Well, I mean, it was kind of a modern fantasy world, and we were like thinking about, chakras and I don't know, meditation, and it got a little bit esoteric, but then we brought it back kind of a little more mainstream. But I felt like after COVID, everybody was kind of depressed, and we wanted like bright and happy colors, and that's how we got to the My Happy Place print. And it's if you look at part of it's all very kind of surrealistic, and it's kind of a surrealistic vibe. Anyway, that print is totally sold out. There's like not one piece left of that. So it definitely was the right direction. And we used a lot of neons. I think neons are, really big. So the collection, I went very, very bright. And also we shot on a green screen, which was really fun. And we put in these crazy backgrounds and we overlapped moving images with static images. And it was a very complex process. We had to, look through hundreds of photographs and then hundreds of moving images and then combine them and then kind of figure out which clothing to put on which image. But in the end, I think it was worth the work because it's been really successful.
Absolutely. It's such an incredible collection. It's beautiful to see and very, very fun to play with in the game also. Given that you spoke about kind of bringing things more mainstream, I'd love to ask, is there a piece that you'd say is a staple for every woman's wardrobe?
Well, I have this dress, we call it the Lauren dress. And, it's a stretch dress with a lot of tucks. And right now we have it in stretched linen and lycra. We also make it in some dressier fabrics and we've done it in some knits, but this dress just never dies. It's my bestseller every year. And this year we did it in a lot of bright colors like coral. I love coral. It looks so good on everybody, and yellow and orange and raspberry. And it's just, everybody just looks amazing in it. Oh, we did orchid too. Orchid's a great color this year. And it's so flattering. Like if you're really skinny, it gives you curves. If you're a little curvier, it makes your curves look good. And it also hides a lot of sins.
The
So
perfect dress.
perfect dress.
Wonderful. Well, what about on the other side of the spectrum then? Do you have any like particular favorite pieces that are a little more maybe fashion forward, or any styling suggestions?
Oh, I always have fashion forward pieces. Unfortunately, like, it's hard to get them out the door to sell in stores, so we do. And also we do always do a lot of expensive beaded leathers. I've had this leather Evil Eye jacket, which we just keep selling it and selling it, selling it. It's just a classic. So it's something that like everybody needs in their wardrobe. And, it's kind of the good girl, bad girl. I'm always sort of catering to that good girl, bad girl, so uptown, downtown girl. So you would wear a sweet dress and put your tough jacket on. So it's, I always love the contrasts and to do things in like contrasts and styling ideas. Well, I always think that styling really takes a lot of work, and you have to like spend a Saturday trying on all your clothes and when I go on a trip, I always do that, lay everything out on the bed, try everything in different combinations. And I always travel very light, like one suitcase carry on, not one with a ton of luggage. But you really have to like work on it and spend a day at home in front of a mirror figuring everything out. And I always say, don't leave the house without looking in the rearview mirror. And that goes for your hair too. Sometimes women just don't comb the back of their hair. And I go, what are you thinking? And the front of their hair looks nice and they didn't like come through the back. So I always say, rearview mirror, always a good call.
All about the details, the rear view mirror. Good pro tip. So speaking of styling, Nicole Miller was one of the earliest brands to be in Covet, I think
Oh
spring
yeah, early on,
2014.
yes. We
Yeah.
love it. We love Covet.
And I think there's been something like 206 million looks styled to date. I mean, that's really phenomenal. What has it meant to you to be part of this particular community for the last 8 years?
Well, it was such a new thing when it started out. And, I was very excited about it. And you kind of didn't know where it would go. And I've just been because a lot of things started back then. I mean, I can't tell you how many things people wanted us to be involved in that just disappeared. And I'm so happy that Covet has just grown and gotten so huge. I think it's great because I thought it was a great idea to begin with. But, sometimes people have a great idea and they don't pull it off. And this has been just pulled off in a fabulous way.
I think we have some questions from the community that they've been waiting to ask you that
Oh,
I'm going to go
okay.
ahead and jump to now. I'm going to start with, what is the fashion trend that is most overdue for a break? Which trends do you foresee coming in strong in the upcoming season? So,
Well, I have to tell you, these cutout midriffs, but I'm afraid they're not going to die so soon. But going back 5 years, I did all these dresses with cutout midriffs and we couldn't sell them. We just couldn't sell them. So we sold a couple, boom, forgot about it. And now they're all over the place. I'm like, everybody's doing them and every which way, long, short. I mean, and yeah, I mean, I think they're kind of looking a little tired, but I actually don't think they're going to disappear so quickly. But I am glad the cold shoulder disappeared. So but I'm like surprised I still see occasional people putting them in their fashion show. And I'm like, I'm not ready for the cold shoulder again.
what about trends that you foresee coming back?
Well, I'm very into my bell-bottom pants these days, I have to say, and like bell-bottom jumpsuits. I was sort of like the skinny jean person for a long time. And I'm just like, all of a sudden I did like total shift to baggy pants. But I think what's going to come back is like low rise. Everybody's been high rise with the jeans. The low rise is coming back for sure.
Absolutely. Cool. I'm going to move on to the next question. How do you keep your style so fresh and up to date? What are your inspirations?
Well, I just try. I mean, I look at everything from old movies to art to, I do some vintage shopping, but, I try not to get too inspired from, like looking at Vogue.com or something, because it's a trap, it's a trap. So I don't know. I mean, I just, I try to find outside influences and, very often like just walking around like downtown, you see girls that are dressed really cool and just their styling idea would give me an idea for a dress. Like one time I saw this girl and she'd like layered these t-shirts on top of each other and looked really cool, but I made a dress that was all layers. It's sort of like cantilever dress and it was scrunched up in the middle. It looked really cool. But I was, inspired by somebody's styling, not by something they'd bought.
I love that daily inspiration from like street fashion and places like that. Amazing. If you ever find yourself in a creative rut, what do you do to get out of it?
Well, hopefully I can travel, but the, well, I feel like less than being in a rut, I'm more a victim of like having too much stuff to choose from. So I feel like the world's a big place and you have all these ideas and then you kind of go, well, I can't do all those ideas. I just can only do one. So, but sometimes I'm stumped because I've ordered this fabric and every once in a while I'll get intimidated by that fabric, either because it's very expensive or it's just so fabulous. I want to make something fabulous in it. And sometimes I just get, intimidated and I have to really like think I want to make the perfect dress. And that's when I get a creative block because I want it to be so perfect.
What is your favorite material to work with, if you have one?
Well, I always like silk or silk viscose. I tend to like drapey fabrics, but I like things with lycra in them. And there's a lot of like beautiful silk lycra combinations now and silk viscose lycra. So I think I like things that are not too stiff. I find a lot of I'll see dresses in stores and they're a very stiff fabric, and I really am not a fan of stiff fabrics. So yeah, something with silk in it.
Timeless. Love it. What is your personal favorite fashion trend of 2022?
Well, I think the bright colors, quite honestly, and I like the fact that everything's going short again. And I remember the year we went from like mini skirts to maxi skirts, and I was so depressed. But I would really like to see those boho maxi dresses go away. And, I've just really liked the just more modern, sleek style. So yeah, I'm not the boho kind of girl at all.
So, what is your favorite season to design clothes for? And do you have a color palette preference? Is it just those bright colors, or does it depend?
Well, it's funny because I tend to wear a lot of black because I think with my red hair, sometimes if I wear a bright color, it's like it's a little gaudy. but I like designing for spring the most. And I love dresses, and I really love colors like I love neons, and I love that kind of corally neon color there is. And I like the citron, and I like the lime green. And I like those, but it's like, they're not the kind of colors you can wear every day. But I always respond to like bright colors. Yeah. And I'm not a big fan of red. I don't really like red that much. And camel hair, forget it. You'll never see me in a camel hair coat.
Love it. And I can see that actually just in, your own attire
Yeah.
today and
No,
the
no beige.
rainbow of
No,
colors behind you.
no beige here.
Love it. Okay, so we have one more question. What, in your opinion, was your most memorable moment of your career? Like when you realized you had made it in the industry?
Well, I think, one of my highlights really was that first fashion show. And because I had waited so long, like all these kids have fashion shows when they're 20. And I was like in my 30s, and I'd been in business. We'd been in business 7 years before I had my first fashion show. So it was a big thing for me to do. And then it was so exciting, and it was so perfect because I had all the big stars in it and whatever. And I was like, yay, I've done my big fashion show, and this is great. And I went, oh my God, I've got to keep doing these. Like I couldn't just do one. So yeah, so that was like, 91. So it's about 30 years of fashion shows. So 2 a year.
That's amazing.
Plus
That's
some mini shows amongst that. But so that's a lot of shows that I was just like, what did I get myself into?
That's amazing though, and also that you cherish the memory of that first show, that really still resonates with you is really beautiful and very, very inspiring to hear.
Yeah, it was right. It was perfect.
Especially given just the career you've had and the impact you've made, and the legacy of Nicole Miller. That's beautiful to hear. So I hate to say it, but that is unfortunately approaching all the time we have today. Nicole, I want to thank you truly for being here, letting our coveters get to know you a little bit better. What a great way for us to celebrate Women's History Month. Before we sign off, where can our audience go to get more information and stay up to date on your collection or any upcoming projects?
Oh, well, NicoleMiller.com, our website, has a lot of information. And you can also follow us on Instagram, Nicole Miller NYC. And, there's a lot of always information. If we're doing anything, we'll post it on Instagram. We also have Facebook, but, website and Instagram is a great place to find us.
Great. Options abound. So be sure to go visit those locations to stay tuned with everything Nicole Miller. Thank you again for being here today. This has been so wonderful. We hope to have you again in the future, and we hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Great to see you all.